Alcohol, a large part of our social culture in the United States. In fact, it is a major part of many countries' social cultures. This country currently has a lot of different opinions about alcohol. Some think that it is bad, and others think that it is simply normal. It has been proven to be unhealthy, but at the same time, so have a lot of other regularly consumed food and drinks. While it remains a controversial topic, the main thing that most Americans can agree on is that teenagers should not drink alcohol. This makes perfect sense. Alcohol is bad for your health, can lead you to make bad decisions, and of course, teenagers cannot be trusted with both a driver's license as well as access to alcohol. Well, today, I'm here to introduce you to an entirely new take on alcohol altogether. Teenagers in the US and abroad are known to be loud, rambunctious, and immature. They are known for making poor decisions that they can hopefully learn from. One of those mistakes, of course, is the mistreatment of alcohol. Many teenagers in the US are introduced to alcohol in high school, ages 17, 16, 15, or even as young as 14. These teenagers are often introduced to alcohol by people of their age, young adults and other teenagers, people still below the legal drinking age of 21. In the United States, specifically South Carolina, there are many laws dealing with alcohol. All the laws relevant to this topic all limit alcohol freedoms in minors. In the state of South Carolina, you must be at least 21 years of age to buy any alcoholic beverage. You must also be at least 21 in order to receive an alcoholic beverage as a gift from another person. There are a few exceptions to this law, such as spouses of age are allowed to give their underage spouse alcohol, and parents are allowed to give their children alcohol in their own home on private property. However, the main idea of these laws is that no person under the age of 21 should be regularly drinking alcohol, nor should they be drinking alcohol on their own free will. In America, we often look at this as a positive rule. This can prevent brain damage in still developing brains and can prevent young people from making poor decisions under the influence. This is all true. However, these laws have some unintended effects as well. For example, the US has a very high rate of alcoholism compared to other countries, even countries with higher alcohol consumption rates and lower drinking ages. In South Carolina, we drink around 28 gallons of beer per person per year. If we include all types of drinks, that we consume 2.85 gallons of pure alcohol per year. South Carolina ranks 22nd for excessive drinking at a rate of 18.1%. That is nearly 1 in every 5 people. Before we talk about AUDs or alcohol use disorders, we must first define what an AUD is. AUD is simply a new term for alcoholism. This means that a person has uncontrolled and problematic drinking. This often means that a person has urges towards drinking, and it is very difficult for them to stop drinking once they have started. According to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, 21.6% of youths aged 12 to 17 have tried alcohol in their lifetime. Adults, on the other hand, report 84.9%. 10.9% of adults in the U.S. have a reported AUD, while 2.9% of children ages 12 to 17 have an AUD. It is very difficult to become addicted to alcohol compared to a lot of other substances. But once you're addicted to alcohol, it is very difficult to fix. 757,000 American youths ages 12 to 17 suffer from this issue. So how do we combat this? It is apparent that alcohol is bad for you, and I'm sure that everyone here has heard the age-old speech about how alcohol is horrific to your health and that you should never drink it. Well, I'm here to enlighten you on a new perspective on drinking culture altogether. I believe that looking into other countries' drinking cultures can be very beneficial for us in the U.S. Germany is a country that is notorious for its huge drinking culture. When hearing about Germany in the context of drinking, many of us think about Oktoberfest. Another thing we may consider when hearing about Germany in the context of drinking is the drinking age in Germany. At the age of 14, with your parents, you can drink soft alcoholic beverages, beer and wine. At the age of 16, you may purchase these soft alcoholic beverages on your own. And at the age of 18, you may purchase distilled spirits on top of soft alcoholic beverages. You may think with such a relaxed legislature towards drinking that Germany must have a huge problem. Well, it turns out that Germany is doing much better than us in the U.S., almost hysterically so. In Germany, only 3.4% of the population ages 16 through 64 are alcoholic dependent or have an AUD. But how is the rate so much lower than ours if they allow minors to drink independently of their parents? Let me tell you all about a story of one of my friends. He is German, but studying in the US. When he was 16, he flew back home to see his parents for 2 weeks, as he hardly gets to see them. Unexpectedly, his father took him to a bar for the first time and ordered him something called a cola beer. I've been told this drink is not very popular in the US, so I'll go ahead and explain it for you. A cola beer is simply half cola, half beer. It is a sweeter version of beer that is used to introduce young people to drinking beer because it is a huge part of their social culture. Anyways, my father's friend ordered him 3 of these before he eventually cut him off. This is a typical first German drinking experience. Settings and types of drinks may vary from person to person, but it is essentially the same. The point of me telling you this is that because of the drinking laws in Germany, parents are allowed to introduce their children to alcohol, rather than kids having to figure it out completely on their own. The reason that America has such a high drinking age stems deep from our history. The temperance movement is what originally called for an end to alcohol. The temperance movement came from when society was religiously rich and deeply focused on morals. Many people believed that alcohol was the root of all society's evil, and therefore wanted to get rid of it. Before the Civil War, many states had their own prohibition laws. When Woodrow Wilson put a wartime ban on alcohol to save grain, the prohibition movement gained a lot of momentum. Shortly thereafter, the United States government declared the 18th Amendment and banned all alcohol sales. Still, many people drank regardless, and many people died due to unsafe moonshine being consumed. Criminal underworlds grew vast and rich, selling alcohol, and this created a very violent time for us in the U.S. In simple terms, prohibition was a complete disaster. The Constitution was then again amended, and states were given back their rights to choose their own minimum drinking age. What set the U.S. standard drinking age, however, was in the 80s, when drinking and driving was a growing issue. Mothers Against Drunk Driving was a huge movement that was pushing for a higher drinking age. So, Reagan effectively moved the drinking age to 21 by telling the states he would take away federal highway funding from them if they did not change the drinking age to 21. Why is this important at this topic? It is essential to know the motives behind rules. The drinking age was not set because the government believed that drinking was a bad practice for young adults. It was set because the entire population was having issues with drinking and driving. So what can we learn from all of this? Germany, a country with a huge drinking culture, suffers from much less alcoholism than we do. It is also apparent that a drinking law does not exist because teenagers were having issues with drinking, but rather because the entire population is having issues with drinking and driving. What can we conclude from these facts? Obviously, other countries deal with alcohol a lot better than we do. The policy which seems to work best is having less age restrictions for alcohol. For a land which claims to be the freest there is, we have very restrictive alcohol laws compared to other less free countries. America has gotten alcohol wrong. Unnecessary restrictions on beverages do not fix problems. Filing lawsuits against parents for condoning drinking does not make America a safer, stronger, or better place. Drinking and driving is still a huge issue today, even after almost 40 years of restrictions. We obviously still have a problem with alcohol that needs to be fixed. America should lower its drinking age. Not even a ridiculous amount like Germany, but enough to where parents can introduce their children to alcohol. It is obviously much better for a person to never drink alcohol than to even drink a small amount of alcohol, but that is not very realistic in our society. In fact, nearly every civilized society ever discovered fermentation. If we can allow children to be introduced to alcohol in a better setting by adults much more mature than themselves, I believe that we can begin solving this issue. Many children drink, regardless of the law, and end up being introduced to drinking by binge drinking at parties. This sets such a terrible precedent for a young person for the rest of their life. Even if a person chooses to begin drinking and follow the rules at the age of 21, they are still often introduced to drinking by binge drinking in college bars, clubs, or at college parties. Many college students call home asking for help with laundry, grocery shopping, and meal prepping. How in the world are they supposed to introduce themselves to a substance that can either be mildly harmful or terribly destructive? Being introduced to beer by your parents in a restaurant is a far better alternative. We allow kids as young as 15 and a half to drive by themselves. We're allowed to purchase firearms at the age of 18. I'm not here to make an argument against any of these rules, but when you're eligible for the draft before you're eligible for a drink, it looks ridiculous. Other people from other countries think that it looks ridiculous as well. In an age where parent rights are a very important topic, I think that drinking should be part of that. Drinking should be introduced to young people and normalized in a responsible sense, rather than as a party beverage you drink until you're completely drunk. The other alternative, of course, is to ban alcohol altogether, but we all know what happened last time we tried that. I think that prohibition is the perfect example of why alcohol restrictions do not work. When you outlaw something, here's what happens. Good, law-abiding citizens follow the rules, and then other, not-so-good citizens do whatever they want. In this scenario, the parents would be considered the good citizens. They follow the rules and do not introduce their children to drinking. The only power that they are given is basically to tell their teenagers not to. Well, we all know how that goes. Teenagers end up just going drinking on their own, and we just let them figure it out. Why don't we educate them? Why don't we teach them what to do and what not to do? Why do we just let them go figure it out? Because when you let them go figure it out, the consequences can be horrific. Alcohol poisoning, car wrecks, or even going to prison. This age restriction is an effort that leads us nowhere and fails to better our society. There is no good reason for such a ridiculously high drinking age. Adults still drink and drive, regardless of the fact that they are so much more mature than their younger counterparts. Maybe if those adults were able to be introduced to drinking in a responsible sense by their parents, then maybe we wouldn't have this issue. Maybe if parents were able to operate as they are designed to, then maybe society would be better off. Maybe if we tried something different than what we've been doing for the past 40 years, we might actually get a result. Maybe, just maybe, if we allowed the family unit, the best system ever utilized by humanity, to operate as it is supposed to, then maybe we could begin to solve our alcoholism problem. Mom and dad know best, not the government of the United States. Thank you.